Hi friends, we're going to work with our vocabulary for Gloria, who might be my best friend. Remember, we don't do motions in these videos anymore because we do them as a group in our whole group meeting, okay? So our first word is knot. The boy showed me how a strong knot in a rope can hold things together. Knot. Now, this word knot is a homophone, so it goes along with our phonics as well because this is the kind of knot, K-N-O-T, of like what you tie. If you just have N-O-T, that's like, you can't do something. I'm not able to do something, like cannot do this. And that's a different spelling. There's no K in that one, okay?
They both have characters.
Our next word is copy. You can copy the outline of your hand by tracing over it on a chalkboard. Copy. So if you're copying something, you are, putting it down in multiple ways and making it similar to the original, but not quite the same. Number 3 is planning. They are planning to fly their kite at the park today. Planning, okay? Planning is, like thinking ahead and deciding what you want to do in the future. Number 4 is lonely. She misses her friend who moved to another town. She is lonely. So if you're lonely, you kind of wish you were with other people, right? You're by yourself and you're sad about it. Because sometimes being by yourself is good, but if you're by yourself and you're sad about it, then you're probably lonely. All right, number 5 is heavily. It was raining heavily. The umbrella kept from getting soaking wet. Well, I'm glad they have that umbrella. It looks like it's raining very hard. So heavily means very hard, right? So if it's raining heavily or doing anything heavily, it means it's very hard. There's a lot of it happening. Number 6 is seriously. The boy takes playing chess seriously. He does not laugh or joke around. So something being very serious is no nonsense, right? It's not silly, it's not a joke. It is serious. And if you're doing something seriously, you're doing it in a serious way, right? With that ly suffix. All right, number 7 is answered. When the phone rang, she answered it and said hello. Answered. So answered means, if someone's calling to you, you respond to that, right? So she responded to her phone. You could answer someone. You could answer a question. You respond to it. That kind of thing. All right, our last vocabulary word is guessed. The boy hid his eyes. He guessed that his friend was hiding behind a big tree. So guess is like if you're thinking something might happen or might be the way. So if you guess an answer, you're not sure, but you give it a try. It's something you're thinking in your brain that it might be. So let's talk about the definitions. Heavily means with a lot of power, right? Very hard. Guessed, made a prediction about the answer of a question or, like where he was hiding, you guess that, so making a prediction. Planning, thinking about or deciding on something. Copy, to do what someone else is doing or to, make multiples of an original. Like if I make copies for you at school, if you'd have copies of worksheets, there's more than one of that same worksheet. Seriously, in a way that is not joking, so it's not silly, it's no nonsense. Answered, said something to someone as a reply or, responded to a phone or a question. Knot, the place where two pieces of string have been tied together, right? Tie a knot, like in your shoes. And then lonely, unhappy because you're alone, right? So that's key. Excuse me. That's key because sometimes people like being by themselves and it's good to be by yourself sometimes. It's when you're unhappy that you're by yourself, that's when that lonely is key. Okay? So as usual, we're going to do our triggers. So you need your piece of paper and your something to write with. Okay, so I have done my 4 squares already. Okay, so we're going to start with the word not. Remember, this is homophone 4 because there's another version of not, but the one we're working with is K-N-O-T, not. Okay, and we're going to think about things. We're going to use an equation trigger. Think about things that when you add them together would make a knot. So something I think of is, as someone who has curly hair, I think of hair plus tangled equals knot. Now luckily that doesn't happen too much in my hair, but I also don't really brush it very much because of the curls. So hair plus tangled equals knot. Okay, something that you might do with your everyday or depending on the kind of shoes you have is, shoestrings plus tie equal knot, right? Because you tie a knot in your shoestrings to keep your shoes on so they don't fall off. All right, and something else you could tie is maybe like a rope. So rope plus tie would also equal knot, because you could tie a knot in a rope too. Like if you're in the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, they do lots of kind of outdoors activities, and tying knots is real big and those kinds of things. Learning, there's lots of different kinds of knots too. There's lots of different ways to kind of tie knots, so that's kind of cool. All right, for our next word, copy, we're going to do examples and non-examples, okay? So, we like our T-chart of examples and non-examples. Okay, so what are things you might copy? I might copy paper, right? Because I make, when you're in person copying activities or worksheets, I do that with paper. So I make paper copies. I could copy down movement if we're doing like Simon Says or Follow the Leader, Go Noodle. We definitely copy that movement. So we could also copy songs, right? Like singing along with a song, copy someone singing it. Okay. So those are some things you could copy. Some things you shouldn't copy. Bad behavior, right? If you see someone acting up, you probably shouldn't start acting the way that they're acting. You shouldn't copy someone else's work, right? Or you shouldn't copy their behavior, their work. So think about yourself. Copy is not, you know what copy is not? Copy is not unique. That's a non-example, because copies are not unique, because there's many of them that are the same, right? So if you're unique, that's not an example of copy. All right, for planning, we're going to do an acrostic. So remember, with acrostics, you put the word vertically in the middle. And I like to do a different color when I do the word, so that it's really clear what is in the middle, what the word is versus what I'm associating it with. So remember, we can do anything that kind of has to do with that vocabulary word. So what are things that you might plan, or things that have to do with planning? Well, I think of planning a party for someone. So planning parties are definitely something you need to plan. It takes a lot to go in, especially if it's a surprise party. You got to plan a lot for that. You could plan to, part of your plan to go on vacation might be to like stay in a hotel. So a hotel could be part of your planning. You have to book that room and make sure you pay for it and get everything taken care of. You could plan to go to the aquarium. Like, that could be something you want to do and something you plan to do. So you could plan to see animals also, right? Or you have to plan to take care of your animals. If you're going out of town somewhere and you can't take your animals with you, you have to have a plan to make sure that they are taken care of, right? Okay, so going back to our hotel, something you have to do, or even reservations for amusement parks. If you're going to Disney World or something like that, you have to book your ticket, right? You have to book your room for a hotel or book your ticket. That just means you're locking it down, making sure that you get one, paying for it, and getting a ticket or a room. Okay, something you plan would definitely be a trip, right? All of this has to do with kind of planning a trip. When you get a lot older, if this is something you might want to have a wedding, and that's something that would take a lot of planning, depending on the kind of wedding you want to have. But you have to plan it. And then also something you might not have thought about, this is all trips and experiences, is you also have to have a building plan. So if you think about the school building or any building you've ever seen, any time before they built it, an architect had to make a plan for that building, so then the engineers and things could build it. Okay, so they had to plan for that. You can't just start building and hope it goes well. You have to make a plan. Okay. All right. So our next vocabulary word is going to be lonely, and we're just going to think of kind of just triggers, examples of things that we might think of with lonely. So like I think of like the word alone. I think of single. I think of being by myself. Think about being home alone. Like that movie Home Alone. I think he was a little lonely for his family. Think about being left out. Right? So these are all things that kind of trigger in my brain when I think of lonely. Okay, so you go there if you need to pause and catch up. Alright, the next one we are going to use heavily. And we're actually going to address our grammar focus for the week, which is idioms. We're going to talk about an idiom, and we're going to say that it is raining cats and dogs. All right, remember with idioms, they don't actually mean the words what they say. Like when I say it's raining cats and dogs, I don't actually mean cats and dogs are falling from the sky. I mean that it's raining heavily, right? So we're going to say raining cats and dogs, and you can do lots of little raindrops. I'm just going to do circles. It'll look a little more like snow, but just for sake of time, that it is raining heavily. That is what it means to rain cats and dogs. And it also goes with our heavily vocabulary word. Alright, so it's an idiom as well. Alright, for seriously, we're going to do an analogy. Alright, so get your bridge map line going on here. And we're going to say seriously is to studying. Right, seriously is to studying, because if you're studying, that's something serious, you shouldn't be joking around. You are trying to learn that material. Versus jokingly is to playing, right? Like you might play jokes on people, you might just, you're having fun. If you're playing, it's not serious, right? You're jokingly, it's serious, it's not serious. Okay, so for answered, we're going to do your one that you probably like the most, and it is a sketch. For answered, I just want you to draw someone answering the phone. You can draw them answering any kind of phone you want, and I say that because often I think of like the older phones that were kind of looked like that, like a handle. It had a handle receiver, but most of the time now you'll probably think of cell phones, right? So, and I should have scooted this over a little bit, but I'm gonna draw my man holding the phone and then answering the phone. I'm even gonna put him say hello. That's how most people answer the phone. I could even say maybe that it's ringing. It's ringing it and he answers it. All right, last word is gonna be another acrostic, and we're gonna do the word guessed. Okay, so if you guessed something, remember you made like that prediction, using your brain, thoughts, and so we're going to do words that we associate with guessed. So first thing I think of for our G is imagination, right? If I have to guess something, if I have to make a prediction, I might have to use my imagination to really do the best I can in answering it, okay? People guess or think about things, maybe about the universe. It's very vast and there's a lot going out there, so they make predictions and then try to study it. We can use the word predict because that's a good synonym for our guess. Remember, synonym means almost the same, so it means almost the same. I'm also going to use thinks because if I'm guessing, it's definitely something that someone thinks because they had to think about it before they did that. Okay. If you're playing hide and seek, like the person in our sentence, you'd have to kind of guess where you think people might be so you can look for them. Okay. If you're guessing, it's one of our process skills and it's something that you process and think about in your brain. Guessing. And remember our other word, wonder, from a while ago. If you wonder about something, you might guess about it, you might predict about it, you might think about it, right? So that's another word that I would associate with the word guess. Guessed. G-U-E-S-S-E-D. Guessed. So those are our vocabulary words for this story. As always, just have a great rest of your day, do your best work, and be your best self. Bye, friends!